and welcome to this episode of ArtsAbly in Conversation. My name is Diane Collin. This series presents artists, academics, and project leaders who dedicate their time and energy to a better accessibility for people with disabilities in the arts. You can find more of these conversations on our website, artsably.com, which is spelled ArtsAbly.com. Today, ArtsAbly is in conversation with Mark Erelli, who is an American singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and touring folk musician living in Massachusetts. You can find the resources mentioned by Mark Erelli during this episode on ArtsAbly's website in the blog section.
Hi. Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, buddy. Hi. I don't know where we were going, but Rosalita was on the radio. I was drumming on the dash and she was whistling to the saxophone. We never promised each other, but when you only have the summer, it's almost like September says, you're gonna wanna remember this. It flies by, it's easy to miss. Don't blink, drink it in. It happens once and it might not happen again. The world's gonna keep on turning. That's just the way it is. So you're gonna wanna remember this. Some old friends picked a weekend to head up north and get out on the lake. Talk about the wives and kids and reminisce about the glory days. Years fly by and days are numbered. Now we're old enough to wonder and just wise enough to know one thing. You're gonna wanna remember this. It flies by, it's easy to miss. Don't blink, drink it in. It happens once and it might not happen again. The world's gonna keep on turning. That's just the way it is. So you're gonna wanna remember this. The last time don't always feel like the last time. So baby, put your hand in mine, and I promise tonight you're gonna wanna remember this. It flies by, it's easy to miss. Don't blink, drink it in. It happens once and it might never happen again. The world's gonna keep on turning. That's just the way it is. So you're gonna wanna remember. You're gonna wanna remember.
Welcome to this new episode of ArtsAbly in Conversation. Today I am with Mark Erelli, who is an American singer and songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and also a touring folk musician living in Massachusetts. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so I know we have a lot of things to talk about because your artistic life is really rich. And so I wanted to have this opportunity to hear about your background. Where do you come from? What brought you to music?
I come to music basically through high school musicals and middle school musicals is where I started out. Though I guess going back even slightly before that, I grew up kind of glued to MTV. That MTV went on the air when I was a younger kid, and I just was completely besotted with this, at the time very new sort of marriage of visuals and music. And was just a big music fan growing up. Didn't know anyone that made music professionally, or at a particularly high level. Didn't have any musicians to speak of in my family. My grandfather would sometimes fool around on a little keyboard, but it just wasn't part of my life. And I had a middle school art teacher who said, you should try out for the musical. And I did, and I got one of the leads. And it turned out I could sing, and I hadn't known that before that. And from there, I went from musicals and learning how to sing to, picking up instruments from there. So a lot of times people ask me, how do you get started in this, singing and playing at the same time? I didn't learn how to sing and play at the same time. I learned one thing and then I added one thing to it. And, I've just kind of kept going with that. I started playing guitar when I was in college, started playing, campus coffee houses. And I was a biology major at the time, but just kind of was really taken with this musical slash creative outlet that I had in addition to biology. I just didn't know how to do it. I knew at this point I had met actual biologists and they were part of my life, and I didn't really know any actual musicians. Though whenever any of them came to campus for a performance, I would somehow find a way to hang out with them and just badger them with questions about how one did this for a living. And when I graduated with a degree in biology, I still just didn't really know how to balance music and art, or how to do art. So I continued on in graduate school in biology. I got a master's degree in evolutionary biology. But all the while I was playing shows and touring as much as possible, and cutting classes on Fridays to make it to gigs, hours away. And eventually that led to getting a record deal out in Western Massachusetts, where I was attending graduate school. And my debut self-titled album came out, I think, a month before my the defense of my master's thesis. And not to paper over too many of the ups and downs since then, but I've basically never looked back since that was just over 25 years ago in 1999, and I'm still doing it.
So did a stupid question, but did the study you had in biology, did it influence your way of writing, or is it totally separate?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a stupid question at all. I love usually people phrase that question in uh in a way that I kind of find a little, harder to take. Usually people say, like, how did you move from something totally different like science to something like art? And then I kind of have to go into my whole spiel about how, like, it's all it's all the same, I mean, and I think this is something that we struggle with as societies, as cultures. Like, yes, everybody is a unique snowflake with their own set of talents, and it is wonderful, and the diversity is wonderful, but we're all basically the same. And to me, that is a source of compassion and a source of empathy, that kind of commonality. And I think it extends to all the different disciplines that we find ourselves engaged in: religion, philosophy, science, creative writing, music, singing. I I actually don't see a difference in any of those things. I mean, there's minor differences in terms of like the approaches or maybe the philosophical framework that you approach things with, but they're all just ways of asking the same questions. And so for me, um, in science, if you're going to say design an experiment and carry it out and try and provide evidence, supporting or negating a particular hypothesis. You need to be creative. You need to be hardworking. You need to be persistent. You need a lot of attention to detail. You need to be flexible. You need a lot of good luck. I'm running out of fingers. And, those are all the things that you need to write a song too. So for me, I found that the scientific skills were basically the same ones that I needed in my musical life as well. And that close kind of observation and the kind of openness to the interconnectedness of the world has served me well, and comes up over and over again in my art.
And maybe that allowed you to kind of switch from the singer-songwriter to the producer to the sideman. So can you talk a bit about how your career evolved? Because you didn't stick to songwriting only, right? You did a lot of different things.
Yeah, correct. I started out as kind of more of a conventional singer-songwriter, releasing records under my own name, and I still do that. But as much as I love singing and songwriting, I also have always really loved the instrumentalists that are maybe kind of slightly less well known, but played a very formative, supportive role in behind the front person. I'm thinking of an artist like guitarist like Ry Cooder and his work with John Hyatt, or an artist like David Lindley, who was very closely associated with Jackson Browne for a long time. I always felt as deeply moved and as interested in what those people were doing as I was, in the songwriters themselves. And you know, I really wanted to branch into that stuff myself, and ended up kind of through backing up and accompanying my friends, my fellow, independent singer-songwriter colleagues. I kind of sidestepped into that side person, that accompanist role. And, for me, I think a lot of times people will say like, oh, are you disappointed that you're not doing your own thing when you're serving as a side man? And I'm like, I am doing my own thing. This is part of my own thing. I also have the best seat in the house. I mean, even people in the front row, I'm like 6 feet from the artist. And I don't work with people, just for a paycheck. I don't even really get those calls. If I'm there working with someone as a side person, I'm there because I love that person and I love their music. And so for me, I get to, stand 6 feet from uh, Laurie McKenna or Josh Ritter or Mark Cohn or Paula Cole or any of the people that I've played with over the years, and I get to experience their art from a very, very close perspective. And I get to know them better as people too. And it just enhances my overall love of music, and it energizes me for when I kind of pivot back towards my own kind of solo career. Um, so again, I think a lot of those roles are only kind of clear cut or kind of overly delineated for people that are maybe kind of looking from the outside in. For me, again, it's all really just versions of the same thing. And as long as I'm making great music with people I love, I'm happy, whether it's my music or whether it's their music or, whatever it is, I'm good.
Yeah, but it's a very good point that you're making. It's like we learn from each other, we collaborate, we create together, and that's a very important process too. And it can bring to your own career a very enriching experience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that doesn't just happen through the music either. That happens both on stage and in the recording studio and, off stage, kind of away from the music, away from the music in general. I see how the people that I work with deal with adversity in their own lives or deal with, whatever challenge it is. They get a call from their kid as they're going on stage that something that someone's gotten into a car accident, or, they've had some career setback or some, particular challenge that they're dealing with. And I get to see how they react and how they approach that situation. And so I learn from these artists kind of in a non-creative, kind of non-musical way too, just about like how to approach life. Um, and so yeah, I feel like I learned so much from my kind of ancillary roles, if you will, as a the roles where I'm not like the main attraction,
Mhm.
and actually I kind of need those times when I'm not the main focus. Uh, mainly because I've always been like an independent sort of middle class musician. I'm not this superstar that has enough, resources to just kind of make everything as easy as it can possibly be. Uh, I'm sure you're aware as an independent musician, you're wearing uh, I don't know how many hats at any given moment, but certainly in the double digits. And as a side person, I have one job to make, two jobs really, to make this artist that I'm working with um, feel safe and respected, and to make their music sound as good as I can, as my contribution can possibly make it. And that's a lot simpler than having to be the booking agent and the publicist and the arranger or the all that stuff. Like it's delightfully streamlined, and I kind of need a break from all those, the myriad of hats that you have to wear as a the main artist, to just kind of focus on the music. Sometimes it's a real kind of nice breather for me.
Can you talk about your albums and also the process of creation behind each one? Because I'm pretty sure everything came with a different context and a different period. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can go through all of them one by one because there's 13 now, of just records under my own name. But you're correct in that I am always trying to kind of push myself into some sort of new territory, and I don't seek out the new creative territory as a marketing tool, or as a sign of like musical restlessness, per se. I I just learn different things from doing different things. I think that's how it kind of works from all of us. If you do the same thing over and over again, after a while, that learning curve kind of flattens out, right? You kind of figure out a lot of you know, of how it works. But if you change it up a lot, you're always kind of coming to things with that sort of beginner's mind, that the Zen Buddhists like to talk about. And so for me, branching out into different genres or different recording contexts. Sometimes I'll record in a conventional recording studio. Sometimes I'll record at home. Sometimes I'll record uh, on location somewhere, like a Civil War Memorial Hall. Uh, you know, do whether it's different genres or different recording contexts or working with different musicians, you just learn different things every time, and it takes and when you're doing that, the art is going in subtly different, vectoring off into kind of subtly different directions every time. And if you do that enough times, you just get a much broader, wider understanding of, what it is to do art as a way of life, and what it is that that I personally have to offer. So, I've done, I, I can't, you can never say I've done everything, because, you've never seen everything. As I think Bruce Cockburn, the wonderful Canadian singer-songwriter, has a record called that. And it's true, every time it's different. And even if you did the same thing every time, you would be different every time you went back to do it, right? So, um, I just look at every project as an opportunity to learn about myself, about recording techniques, about musical approaches, about genres, um, about different people that I'm choosing to work with and what they have to offer. And I just find it endlessly interesting, and I haven't been bored once in 25 years.
That's the beauty of working in music, is that we never get bored.
And you never reach the bottom, or you never reach the top, or you can always go further in. I think if you feel stuck at some point, that's not a sign that you've reached the end of something. It's just like something's wrong. It's like you're not digging deep enough, or you need to focus on your mental or emotional health, or some other aspect of your life that's preventing you from digging further in. But you'll never get to the bottom of any creative endeavor. And that's what I love about it.
So what are your recent projects and the ones that you are turning towards to right now?
Sure. Well, in 2023, I put out my most recent solo record, which was my first record that I had put out after kind of revealing to my audience that I was diagnosed with the retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative retinal disease that eventually leads to legal blindness. And that record kind of thematically dealt with a lot of the kind of emotional fallout from kind of coming to grips with that diagnosis. And my fans and my audience were just wonderfully supportive, both financially and emotionally. They really kind of showed up to support my my honesty in that project, which was really humbling. Um, After that project, I put out a third record with my bluegrass band, which is called Barnstar, which I share with four other guys. And that was a project that we'd recorded before the pandemic and just hadn't found a way to take back out, because we're five guys that sing around a central mic. So when there's a pandemic happening, it's a very unsafe situation, very unsafe setup. So we were just kind of waiting till we could find a good time to do that. So that came out this year. And then, as far as what's next, there's really a couple things on the horizon. This past summer, I did a series of shows with a string quintet. So I've worked with strings and string sections on records, recently, but they've been playing supporting roles. I'll record the kind of rock band, kind of basic tracks kind of first, and then we'll add the strings on, as an after, not as an afterthought, but after the fact is what I'm trying to say. But these shows with the string quintet, it was like, well, what happens if we take away the rock band and the strings just are the band? And it changes the context of everything. And it was deeply moving, and the audiences loved it. And we recorded the final show, multi-tracked the final show, and I've always wanted to do an official kind of proper live album, but I wanted it to be the right musical format. I didn't just want to rehash what was done on the records in front of an audience. I wanted to do something sort of transformative, and it took me 25 years, but I figured it out. And so we're going to release this live uh, string quintet record is going to be the next project, hopefully in the first half of 2025. And then hopefully in the latter half of 2025 will be the 14th or the next kind of studio album, and the next batch of songs, new original songs under my own name.
Before we recorded, you mentioned that you're gonna post a fundraiser.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to be you know the lot of the modern kind of independent artist is that because of streaming, because of inflation, because of changes in music consumption, it's just not really possible to make enough money from the release of a particular record to fund the next record. uh, it can be done, but that record has to be wildly successful, and that's just never been my path. So I have a dedicated kind of, I don't want to call them a cult audience, but they're small but mighty base of support. And so every time I need to do a new project, I kind of have to go back to them and make the case for them supporting it in advance. So I'll be launching a Kickstarter in mid-October, I think, to support the recording and the release of not just the live album, but the next studio album as well. So that'll be a little bit of a different thing for me. I've done Kickstarters and crowdfunding in the past, but if it was for one particular project, this time we're just doing both projects at the same time, and because they're kind of linked in a way.
Please share the link with us, right? So that we can
Yes,
share that with our audience.
absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do.
I have a question about the fact that in a few years ago you were diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, and I was wondering if it changed your way of writing your music and perceiving your music, and in what we call disability arts, basically. How do you see yourself in that world?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it changed it almost immediately, in the sense that my disability or my diagnosis kind of terrified me, because um, you know I think I'd always associated like songwriting and what you need to songwrite as like it was a result of the powers of observation, right? And observation is it's usually implies that you're looking at something, you're taking it all in visually. So I was like, if I can't see things, or I can't see, things with the visual acuity and the scale of detail that I'm used to, how isn't that doesn't that mean that my songs and my art will be poorer for that? Um, and I grappled with that for quite some time, and kind of where I am with all that is that, and I've kind of learned this through the disability culture as I've started to, interact with that kind of, subset of wonderful humans that, you know, there's other senses, and seeing is only one of them, and it does enjoy like a kind of privileged place, kind of at the top of the pyramid as far as senses go, but it's not the only way to experience the world. And I'm not legally blind yet, except except at night, or in dark backstages. I can't see much of anything. But you know, for someone like Ray Charles or Stevie Wonder, do they have any less of a rich of an artistic life than sighted people? Like, of course not. They're geniuses. Um, so I've kind of come to the understanding, maybe in the only way that you really can, which is to kind of lose one of those senses, um, or to kind of take a hit to one of those senses, to realize that there's other ways of experiencing the world,
Mhm.
and even in performance, sometimes you'll get people that feel like you should be looking right at the audience, making eye contact with the audience when you perform. And I've really kind of pushed back on that. Like, I'm not getting any visual input back if I'm looking into the audience. All I see is a black void. And it's kind of terrifying at times. It just feels, you can feel so alone, and even in a room full of hundreds of people. So, I kind of frequently will perform with my eyes closed. And, I find that I can envision things in my mind that way, that help support the expression of what I'm trying to, communicate in my music. Um, and, that's just as valid as, being on Broadway, or, being in a musical and hamming it up for the audience and looking them, in the eye. Um, as far as how I see myself in the disability culture, uh, I'm still figuring that out. To be honest, my disability is an invisible one right now. Unless I'm using my white cane, which I will use mainly in dark environments or at night or in unfamiliar environments. I still don't kind of take it out of the house all the time. Uh, if I'm not using that white cane, you can't tell. I just look like a dude with glasses, And so, but that kind of puts me in this interesting position because I can quote unquote pass, for quote unquote normal, right? Um, not These are not words that we like to use, obviously, but I use them to make a point. I'm also a white male, so people treat me like the thing that everything else in society is judged against. And I don't say that, to agree with it. I just say that as like the white male patriarchy is definitely a thing, and I benefit from that because of the way that I was, I was just born this way, But so I'm treated that way, but I don't have all of the same, kind of capabilities that a person, a full-sided, white middle-aged male has, right? So I have this deep identification with disability culture and with people that share disabilities of any kind, and yet I'm treated as quote unquote normal. And so this kind of puts me in the space where I feel oftentimes obligated to step up in the name of folks that may not be listened to, that might struggle with similar things that I struggle with, just to different degrees, or they can't hide it, in the way that someday I won't be able to hide it. And so, I'll frequently be backstage at a venue and say, like, I can't see these stairs here. I can't make it. I'm afraid I'm going to fall down these stairs. Can we put some brightly colored tape on the edge of the leading edge of each stair? Or can we get a light in here? And, because of the way that I look, I don't think anyone has ever said anything other than, "Oh my gosh, of course, yes, we'll get right on that. Oh, I can see why that would be helpful. That'll help everybody. Yes, right away." I have friends in the disability culture, in the disability community, um, who are, female, people of color, um, And they're like, yeah, that's not my experience, right? For obvious reasons of sexism and misogyny and racism. So because of the way that I look and what I'm living with, I feel like least at this point, one of the ways that I can help is to just not be afraid to talk about it and not be afraid to point out things that would help me, because I know that they're going to help other people that come after me, and those people may not be listened to in the way that I am. Um, so I'm trying to be an ally for a community that I'm a part of, almost in a way, an advocate and an ally. Um, and it thus far, people seem to be, as I said, really open to hearing things from me, and I try and do it in a really respectful and congenial way. I don't want to shame anybody for not um, being able to 100% of the time expand their level of consciousness to the entire spectrum of human experience. I think we're all human. We all forget, and kind of have blinders on at some points in our lives. So I try and be nice about it, but I do have to kind of remember to speak up because I'm not really just speaking up for myself.
Sometimes when we speak with people who don't know anything about disability, they don't realize that one thing that will help us as disabled artists will also help them as non-disabled for things that they do every day. Things like uh, voiceover or things that are very simple that are now today in our everyday life and started with the conversation about how can I help this person with disability? And
Yeah,
that we kind of forget a little bit. If maybe these colorful bands that you put on the stairs will help more than someone who has visibility or vision or sighted issues, but
yeah,
also anybody, because it's convenient to have a really clear mark on these steps.
yeah. It could just help someone who's old and can't see as well as they used to. They may not really qualify as, having a visual disability, but yeah, I mean, I think that's been one of the most amazing parts of getting to familiarize myself with disability culture is the degree of problem solving and the degree of optimism that is required. Um, I find that truly inspiring, and it's a lot of those things, like you say, they've helped us. I read. I don't know if you've read a book by this guy Andrew Leland. It came out last year, The Country of the Blind. Fascinating book, and I loved it so much that I gave it to literally everybody that I loved for Christmas. And I found a way to reach out to him, and Andrew and I are buddies now. But he goes through a lot of these like technological improvements that we take for granted. LPs, records, vinyl records were, a way to kind of push the boundary for getting audio books, for blind people onto fewer discs. They used to, the discs used to only be able to hold whatever 10 minutes aside or whatever. And so to read a whole book, you might have dozens and dozens of discs that you had to work your way through. And so pushing the boundaries of that recording disc technology gave us, long player records. And, I listen to those every day and I make them myself. So, that kind of stuff I really love learning about, and just the problem solving kind of optimistic outlook in general, I think is just something that I really want to be, adopting at all times if I can help it.
That's great. I have one last question for you, and
Sure.
it's about people who might have inspired you or motivated you in your career. Maybe you have one or two people you're really thinking of in terms of this person really put me into the path and showed me some things that I don't forget today. So if you had a few people to name, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I know exactly who I would name. All the formative people in my life have been teachers, and I don't mean that figuratively. I mean literally teachers. I'm thinking of my middle school art teacher who not only took looked at my drawings and said like, "You're a really great artist," and called me an artist for the first time, you know? I mean, my parents always loved what I drew, but they love everything I do. I didn't know what I didn't know what that really meant. And so to have someone outside of the house recognize the value of what you do and call you an artist, that made a really big impression on me. And that was the same teacher that encouraged me to try out for the musicals. And he also, ran all the musicals at the junior high and the high school. And I did musicals with him all up from junior high through high school. So it would have been, 6 years with him. Also in that time, I had a really influential high school biology teacher who, kind of like my art teacher called me an artist, my biology teacher treated me like an actual biologist and encouraged me to do, to make to kind of conduct myself like the classic naturalists had done over the years, to get outside and make observations and to share those observations with others and try and use that to kind of support scientific research and conservation efforts. And that biology teacher also was a really big fan of the Grateful Dead, and took me to see the Grateful Dead a couple times, and shared a bunch of Grateful Dead concert bootlegs with me. And that he really opened up my entire world to the kind of vast swath of Americans, roots music through the Grateful Dead. And so, and I had teachers in college that were the same way, that, in both the arts and in science. But those two early high school teachers were really important to me, and they basically kind of set me off on the twin paths, that I've kind of merged in my life as an adult.
It's something that a lot of people share. If you have a great teacher at a very early age who gives you a an overview of what it is to be an artist, then you are set to become an artist later if you're really taking this path.
Yeah, I agree. I think, even more generally than that, it's just there are teachers that are better at seeing kids, quote unquote, and just dignifying their experience.
Mhm.
So whether they're writers or actors or artists, or whether they love math or whatever it is, these teachers that really dignify kids and say like, you are this already, and you could continue to do this and take it, and evolve it in ways in your life that you can't even really envision yet.
Mhm.
Those teachers, I mean, that is God's work right there. I mean, both my parents were teachers. So I come from a background that really values education, but this is probably a different podcast. But I kind of feel like the economic ladder has been kind of upended. Like teacher. I don't know why CEOs make so much money. Personally, I feel like teachers. I can't think of another role in society that um, is more important and should be valued economically as such. But again, different podcast. They've been invaluable to me as a person and as an artist, and I think a lot of us have. Hopefully, we're lucky enough to have people like that in our lives.
I agree. Teachers are really, really important. And
Yeah.
plus, we are learning, and teaching some people around us without sometimes realizing it, but we are learning from each other. So
Yeah.
if we don't have a teacher who shows us the value of teaching and learning, then it's too bad because we are really losing this opportunity of exchanging, which is beautiful.
Exactly. I mean, again, that's evolution, right? Like you share how you do something or what's possible with someone else, and they may not do it in quite the same way, or they may see like, oh, well, if you can do this, then you can also do this, and then they take it further, and like that is how things, literally evolve. And I feel like that's where me being honest with my audience about my disability was really important. Like I didn't I didn't want to I didn't want to put a lot of effort into keeping that part of me hidden. I wasn't embarrassed about it in any way, but it just would have required so much work to not talk about it. And by being honest about it, um, there's absolutely going to be some kid somewhere someday that uh might come across my music or my story and says like, well, he did it, maybe I can do it, you know and I know that because I came across other people's stories and they inspired me in the same way, so um gosh, I hope I live to see that, and see how that happens and see how that evolves. That would be just the greatest gift to kind of pass it on.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And it's I wish you all the greatest success in your next projects.
Thank you.
And yeah, share with us some of the links that you want to share, and I'm sure we will be more than happy to just share that with the audience.
Thank you so much, Dan. We'll do.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.